Sorry. Jessica. Strict capacity limit. We didn't get your RSVP in time. My mother's voice was a whisper, but it cut through the freezing Wisconsin air like a blade. I stood on the porch of the massive lakeside lodge, holding my 6-year-old son, Benjamin's hand. His little grip tightened in mine. Inside, I could hear laughter, the clinking of glasses, the warmth of a fire. But here, outside the heavy timber door, the wind off Lake Geneva bit into our faces. "Mom," I said, my voice steady, despite the shock. "It's Christmas Eve. Grandma invited us." "Capacity limit," she repeated, her eyes cold, devoid of any recognition that I was her daughter, or that Benjamin was her grandson. "Go home. Jessica, there's no room for you here." And then, she shut the door. The sound of the latch clicking into place echoed in the sudden silence. Before I tell you what my grandmother did when she found out about this lie, and trust me, you're going to want to hear it, drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from tonight. I always love seeing how far our community reaches. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I didn't even knock again. I just turned around, picked Benjamin up, and walked back to my car. The walk was silent, save for the crunch of snow under my boots and the distant sound of carolers from a neighbor's house. Benjamin was sobbing quietly against my shoulder. "Grandma hates me," he whispered, his voice muffled by my coat. "I made her a card." "No, baby," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "She doesn't hate you. She loves you." But how do you explain to a 6-year-old that the cruelty of adults has nothing to do with him? How do you explain that he's just collateral damage in a war he didn't start? I buckled him into his car seat, handing him his tablet to distract him. Then I got into the driver's seat and just sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. My phone was in my purse. Silent. I knew if I checked it, there would be no messages from my mother apologizing, no texts from my father asking where we were, no calls from my brother Tyler wondering why his sister wasn't at the party. Because this wasn't an accident. This was the pattern. For years, I dragged around an invisible chain. It was heavy, made of hope and guilt and the desperate need for validation. I'd convinced myself that if I just tried harder, if I was just more successful, more compliant, more perfect, they would finally see me. I'd paid for my own college while they funded Tyler's 3 failed startups. I'd bought my own car while they leased Tyler a luxury SUV. I'd built a successful event planning business from scratch, while Tyler managed my father's investments poorly. And every Christmas, I'd show up with expensive gifts, a smile plastered on my face, hoping this would be the year I wasn't the punchline. This would be the year I wasn't the afterthought. But tonight, standing on that porch, freezing while my mother lied to my face, something snapped. The chain didn't just break, it shattered. I started the car. The heater hummed to life, blowing cold air that matched the chill inside my chest. "We're going home, Ben," I said. "We're going to have our own Christmas." I put the car in drive and pulled away from the lodge, leaving the warmth and the laughter behind. I was done. I was finally, truly done. I was about 10 minutes down the winding, pine line driveway when my phone rang. The sound was loud in the quiet car, startling me. I glanced at the screen. Grandma Mary. My stomach dropped. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to keep driving and never look back. But another part, the part that still loved the woman who had taught me to bake and read me stories, couldn't do it. I pulled over to the side of the road and answered. "Hello?" Jessica. Grandma Mary's voice was sharp, laced with confusion. "Where are you? Dinner is about to be served." "We left." "Grandma," I said, My voice tight. Mom told us. She said there was a strict capacity limit. She said we weren't on the list. There was a silence on the other end, so profound I thought the call had dropped. Then, Grandma Mary spoke again. Her voice was low. Dangerous. A tone I had never heard directed at me. Turn the car around, she commanded. Right now. My husband, John, was sitting next to me, his hand on my shoulder. Do it, he said. I looked at him, then back at the road ahead. The lodge was behind us, but Grandma's command hung in the air. I could still feel the phantom cold of the porch, the sting of my mother's rejection. Every instinct screamed at me to keep driving, to protect myself and my son from more pain. But Grandma Mary wasn't like my parents. She was the one who had taught me that respect is earned, not demanded. She was the one who had built that lodge with her own money, her own grit. If she was angry, she wasn't angry at me. I turned the car around. The drive back felt longer than the drive away. The anticipation was a heavy weight in my stomach. Benjamin had stopped crying and was now watching me with wide, worried eyes. Are we going back to the party? He asked. Yes, baby, I said. Grandma Mary wants to see us. We pulled up to the lodge again. This time, Grandma Mary was waiting on the porch. She stood under the warm glow of the lanterns, wrapped in a thick wool coat, her silver hair shining in the light. My parents were nowhere to be seen. As we got out of the car, Grandma Mary walked down the steps, her gaze fixed on me. She didn't look angry. She looked formidable. Jessica, she said, pulling me into a hug that smelled of lavender and wood smoke. Then she knelt down to Benjamin's level. I am so sorry I wasn't at the door to greet you, my little man. I was busy in the kitchen. But I'm so happy you're here. Benjamin's face lit up. The tears forgotten. I made you a card. I can't wait to see it, she said, taking his hand. Come inside. It's too cold out here. She led us into the lodge. The music stopped as we entered. The conversation died down. My mother, father, and brother Tyler were standing near the fireplace, drinks in hand, looking like the picture-perfect family they pretended to be. When they saw us, their smiles faltered. My mother's face went pale. Grandma Mary didn't hesitate. She walked straight to the center of the room, still holding Benjamin's hand, and raised her voice. Everyone, may I have your attention? Please. The silence was absolute. Even the fire seemed to quiet down. Tiffany, Grandma said, turning to my mother. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried to every corner of the room. Would you please join me? My mother walked forward, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. She looked nervous, glancing around at the guests as if searching for an escape route. Yes, Mother, I have a question for you, Grandma said, her eyes locking onto my mother's. Who told you there was a capacity limit for this dinner? My mother's eyes widened. She stammered, looking from Grandma to me and back again. Well, I assumed. With the caterers and the seating. You assumed, Grandma repeated, her voice dripping with disdain. Or did you lie? I didn't lie, my mother protested, her voice rising in panic. I just wanted everything to be perfect. It was a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, Grandma said. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. Strange, because I checked the security camera footage from the front porch while Jessica was driving back. She tapped the screen and held the phone up to a nearby microphone stand that the band had been using. The sound of my mother's voice filled the room, clear and cruel. Strict capacity limit. We didn't get your RSVP in time. Go home. Jessica, There's no room for you here. The gasp from the room was audible. Guests exchanged horrified glances. My father looked at the floor. Tyler took a sip of his drink, looking bored. But my mother stood frozen, her face a mask of humiliation. The social veneer she had spent her life polishing was shattered in seconds. Grandma Mary looked at her, then at the silent room. "There is always room for family in this house," she said, her voice shaking with suppressed rage. "Unless that family decides to close the door on their own blood." She turned to me, her expression softening. "Jessica, you and Benjamin and John sit here, next to me." She pointed to the seats of honor at the head of the table. My mother sat down, weeping into a napkin. It was a performance I'd seen 1,000 times. The martyr, the victim of her own good intentions. "I was just so stressed," she sobbed, looking around for sympathy that wasn't there. "I wanted tonight to be perfect for you, Mother. I thought if there were too many people, it would be overwhelming. I made a mistake. I'm only human." My father moved to comfort her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "She's been under a lot of pressure, Mom," he said to Grandma. "Let's just move past this. We're all here now." "Yes," Tyler piped up, swirling the ice in his glass. "Can we eat? I'm starving." Grandma Mary didn't sit. She remained standing at the head of the table, her hands resting on the polished wood. She looked at my mother, then at my father, and finally, her gaze landed on Tyler. "We are not eating yet," she said. Her voice was calm, but it had a weight to it that made the air in the room feel heavy. "Because we aren't done with the truth." She turned to face Tyler directly. "Tyler, would you be a dear and fetch the antique Georgian silver service for the table? The one your grandfather bought in London. We should use the best for Christmas." The room went still. I frowned. The silver service was massive, a tea and coffee set worth easily $50,000. It was kept in a locked display cabinet in the library. I knew every inch of it because, growing up, I was the only one allowed to polish it. Tyler wasn't allowed near it because he was clumsy and careless. Tyler froze. He blinked rapidly, a bead of sweat appearing on his temple despite the chill in the lodge. The silver," he stammered. I don't think we need it. Grandma, it's a hassle to get out." "I want it," Grandma said. "Go get it." It's not there," he mumbled, his eyes darting to my parents. My father stiffened. My mother stopped crying instantly, her face going from flushed to gray. "Not there?" Grandma asked. "Where is it?" "I sent it out," my father interjected quickly, his voice too loud. For professional cleaning. As a surprise for you, Mom. We wanted it to shine." "Professional cleaning," Grandma repeated. She reached into the pocket of her wool coat again. This time, she didn't pull out a phone. She pulled out a slip of pink paper. She slid it across the table toward my father. "Is fast cash pawn and loan a professional cleaner?" "Zachary." My father looked like he'd been punched in the gut. Tyler dropped his glass. It shattered on the hearth, the sound exploding in the quiet room. "I found this in Tyler's room this morning," Grandma said, her voice like steel. $50,000 worth of heirlooms. Pawned for $4,000. To cover what? More gambling debts. Another investment. She turned to my mother. "And you knew. That's why you didn't want Jessica here tonight." The realization hit me like a physical blow. It wasn't just about capacity. It wasn't just about me being the scapegoat. I would have noticed. I whispered. "I always check the cabinet. I always polish the silver on Christmas Eve." "Exactly," Grandma said. You needed Jessica gone not because she's difficult, but because she is the only one in this family with enough integrity to notice a crime. You turned away your own daughter to protect a thief. The silence in the room was no longer just awkward, it was disgusted. The wealthy guests, the neighbors, the friends, they were looking at my parents and brother, not as peers, but as pariahs. They weren't just mean, they were criminals. Tyler stood up, his face red. It was my inheritance anyway, I just took an advance. It was not your inheritance, Grandma snapped. It was my legacy, and you sold it for scrap. Grandma Mary didn't yell. She didn't throw things. She simply walked to the fireplace, picked up a poker, and stoked the fire, as if clearing the air. Zachary. Tiffany, she said, her back to them. The guest cottage. You have lived there rent-free for 10 years. You have treated it as your birthright. She turned around. Pack. You have until midnight. Mom, my father cried, his voice cracking. It's Christmas. Where will we go? There's a Motel 6 on the highway, Grandma said. I checked. They have capacity. And Tyler? She continued, looking at my brother who was now slumped in a chair, head in his hands. You are no longer welcome on this property. I am removing you from my will first thing tomorrow morning. The entire estate. The investments. The land. Everything goes to Jessica. You can't do that, my mother shrieked. She's just Jessica. She doesn't know how to manage an estate. We're family. I looked at them. Really looked at them. For the first time, I didn't see the giants who controlled my happiness. I saw 3 small, desperate people shivering in the warmth of a house they had never deserved. The invisible chain that had bound me to them, the need for their approval. The fear of their rejection was gone. It lay in pieces on the floor, shattered by the weight of their own greed. I am family, I said, my voice steady. And you told me to go home. So I am. I gestured to the door. This is my home now. Please leave. My father looked at me, then at Grandma, then at the guests who were now openly staring with judgment. He realized, finally, that there was no way out. No charm. No lie. No manipulation could fix this. He grabbed my mother's arm. Let's go. They shuffled out into the cold, passing the very spot where they had left me standing an hour ago. The heavy timber door clicked shut behind them, sealing out the cold, the lies, and the toxicity. The room was silent for a heartbeat. Then, Grandma Mary walked over to the stereo and pressed play. Soft jazz filled the air. Well, she said, smoothing her coat, I believe we have a dinner to enjoy. 1 year later, the fire in the lodge crackled, warm and bright. The smell of cinnamon and roasting turkey filled the air. Benjamin was sitting on the rug, tearing open a present, his laughter ringing out clear and happy. The lodge looked different. John and I had spent the last year renovating, stripping away the heavy, dark drapes my mother had loved, letting in the light. We'd turned the guest cottage into an art studio for Benjamin and a workshop for John. My parents were living in a 2-bedroom apartment in Milwaukee. I heard through the grapevine that they were bitter, isolated, and constantly complaining about how I had stolen their inheritance. Tyler was facing charges for fraud related to another investment scheme. I hadn't spoken to them since that night. Not once. I sat in the armchair by the fire, a mug of hot cocoa in my hands. Grandma Mary sat opposite me, dozing lightly, a contented smile on her face. I looked at the stocking hanging on the mantel. Jessica, John, Benjamin, Grandma. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was auditioning for my seat at the table. I didn't feel the cold draft of impending rejection. I looked at the camera. At you. If you are sitting there right now, feeling the ache of a family that doesn't see you, feeling the cold of a door shut in your face, I need you to listen to me. You are not the problem. You are not difficult or too much or not enough. You are simply in the wrong house. Don't stand on the porch waiting for them to let you in. Don't freeze yourself trying to be warm enough for people who are committed to being cold. Turn around. Walk away. Build your own fire. Because the only thing you lose when you cut ties with toxic people is the pain of trying to please them. And what you gain. I looked around the room at my son, my husband, my grandmother, my peace. You gain everything.